And I think in our busy lives, if you give people an opportunity to do good, they will. Because you can't research everything, right? And it's impossible to be perfect, but we can always keep taking steps to go that direction.
The first question I'd like to start with is, where does the name come from, LilyBee?
We actually wrestled around with the name a bit. And I think we started with something like cotton and wax, or just trying to come up, and I'm from Portland originally, so there's lots of sort of like, cactus and anchor, something like that. But I have a niece, or a goddaughter named Lily, and we call her LilyBee as a nickname. And so when LilyBee kind of rolled off the tongue, I thought, yeah, let's just give it a go. Like, we just need something, and that feels really sweet and not as like, yeah, just different, a little bit sweet, really.
Nice. And I can, maybe there's a link there to the type of organization you are, because it's not just the product you're providing to people, is it? It's a product that's going to help the next generation get a planet that we all want them to have, because we've had the same opportunity. Have I made that connection, or is that off the mark?
No, definitely. So our story or trajectory, I was actually a yoga teacher who had kind of burnt out and found myself in Hawke's Bay and was just taking a few months off. And this became like, oh, that's totally different. Maybe I'd never done a farmer's market before. So I call myself an accidental entrepreneur, because this was not necessarily the plan I had for myself, but definitely found myself here. So, and that was why I was pretty nonchalant about the name as well. Like, oh, it's just for fun. Like, and it just went on this wild trajectory. And part of the inspiration was certainly, I grew up in a kind of green environment, being from Portland, Oregon, and then being in the yoga world, and looking around at the beauty of New Zealand, and then seeing kind of rubbish around, or kind of questioning that, made me think, what did we do before plastic? Because plastic's a fairly new invention and is causing massive problems, right? So tried a few recipes, and then when I got pregnant, that was really the next inspiration, was understanding the gravity of the next generation, right? So that, I think when you're not a parent, you have a sense of that, but all of a sudden when you're a parent, you're like, what is that going to be? So the product was important, and we've done amazing things with people adopting the product. I think by our calculations, we've helped save something like 50 million meters of plastic from going into the environment. That's a drop in the bucket as far as like what actually does go into the environment. But when you think of, like, we started in a 1-bedroom cottage at a farmer's market and figured it out as we went along. And then our community element is so important, because it's all those little people taking small steps that make this massive difference. So it was really product environmentally driven. And then what I realized is that the product for me is almost secondary in some way. So that was the beginning. But we've done amazing things. Like, we just became B Corp certified. We just became certified as a living wage employer, and we've still figured out how to manufacture in New Zealand, in Hawke's Bay. So the community that we create within our office space, within the manufacturing space, and that ripple effect out to our customers, that's really core to who we are and our story. So that was a probably long answer to a short question, but so very product driven, but it's actually become almost secondary in a lot of ways.
Awesome. So there's a lot for me to unpack there. The first one I'm going to go down the route of is something that's probably not that well understood in New Zealand, and that's the B Corporation. What does that mean to the business that's different from running a limited liability company?
So B Corp, I've actually been aware of B Corp, probably some of my best friends in the Portland area actually were a big part of getting its feet there. So when I started a business, I knew that I wanted to be B Corp certified. And then going through as you speak to more and more businesses who are B Corp, you realize it's not just a checking of the box. Like, you don't just take the test and you're good. Or I actually really respected it, because as we went through the accreditation, I realized there's no real gaming the system. Do you know, it's not like one set test. It's like a choose your own adventure, and like different things unlock as you answer things differently. So we were actually reasonably in line, and we didn't have to make a ton of changes, which was amazing. Like usually companies have to go through a huge rigmarole, and it didn't take us that long because we kind of set ourselves up with those values. So it's third-party accredited. They're a highly respected organization worldwide. And I think a lot of people are understanding that there's what's called greenwashing, where people want to be sustainable. They want to say that they make certain claims, but this is someone else saying like they are what they're saying. And then that's really where the purpose-driven companies come in. So once you get the accreditation, you are looked at every 3 years and evaluated, and you keep getting better. It's not just to check the box and forget it. And then it's coming in, I've heard it's coming into New Zealand. I think it's in Australia, where our board of directors are actually going to have to sign off, and we'll be we have a legal constitution or credit contract essentially saying that this is what we're doing. And this is, so it's a real accountability for claims that people make. And it's something that I am hugely proud of. Like it's one of yeah.
What does that then mean for the LilyBee community, those people who have decided to shift their behavior or have seen your product as fitting in with the way that they want to live and they want to see everyone live? What does it mean for them and for the products that you produce for them?
So now everything that we bring in will be under the lens of B Corp, right? And continue to be, this is us, right? We are a purpose-driven company, and it all has to go through that lens of like, does that fit with our ethos and who we are? And we can also look at the things that we can improve on. It's when we look back and when we looked at the survey, it was like, where are we weak? Where are we strong? Where do we want to improve and take the next steps? For me as a consumer, when I see something that someone or even in the business world, when I see someone that is B Corp certified, I immediately have a respect for that company, that their values will very likely be in alignment with mine, and that we're going towards, it's a real trust issue, I think, or a trust moment that I see in that, like, yep, that's a company that I want to support, and that's something I want to be a part of. In one of our initial things that we wrote up, or that I wrote up, was that we believe in the good in people. And I really do. And I think in our busy lives, if you give people an opportunity to do good, they will. And in our busy lives, you can't research everything, right? And it's impossible to be perfect. And I have an almost 4-year-old, and I will tell you, there's still plastic in my house sometimes, right? Like we're not perfect, but we can always keep taking steps to go that direction. So when I see something that is B Corp certified, I know someone else has done the work for me. I don't have to ask a lot of more questions. And I can be part of that movement with my purchasing power, who I align myself.
That segues really well to, there was a sentence I wanted to read out, because I think this kind of imbues what you were saying there, that we don't need a handful of people doing zero waste. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. That was from Anne-Marie Bonneau. How many people are in the LilyBee community now?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. I know, I mean, we have now sold hundreds of thousands of wraps. And so that many households have our wraps. And it's something that people, because I was so particular about it working well, and I want it to be fun and engaging and not, there's something that I call sort of eco snobbery. I hate it, right? And I hate it. And I feel like it should be accessible to the busiest of moms, right? The busiest of people. It should be something that you don't have to think about, that you just enjoy in your life. Like people talk about how they go and enjoy getting their leftovers out of the fridge, or it's like a gift, right? So when you can become part of people's world like that, then all of a sudden they go, you know what, I can do that one thing. So what else can I do? And so I've also called us kind of an eco gateway drug, because people get confidence in doing that one thing. And then it's like, right, well, maybe I could do a reusable water bottle, right? Maybe I could use a reusable coffee cup, and they start asking more questions instead of just feeling like, you know what, that's in the too hard basket. I can't do this, and I don't like it, and you're not going to keep going, right? So that's a huge part of our ethos, is getting those small steps, empowering people that they can do it, inspiring them that they can, and then connecting them with a different way of doing things, right? And feeling good about it along the way instead of feeling like it's a chore.
I really like to hear that, because early on, I think in that sustainability movement, it's something that's new and different, and it's a small group trying to change the behaviors of a big group. Whereas it feels like, at least to me now, looking from the outside in, that we're at that mainstreaming moment. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with one of the heads of a supermarket chain in New Zealand, saying, we want to mainstream this, and we want to make it accessible, which means it has to hit a price point, and in return we can give volume to these suppliers. And there's big companies that want to acquire the brand because of the value of those communities that have hundreds of thousands. And I was looking online at your community at some of the reviews for the product, and there was 3,854 last time I checked, and they're almost all 5 stars. So this isn't an edge product that might work and needs some tinkering. This is something that's working right now for people in their homes. How did you? Go for it. I was going to ask, how did you get it to that state where, it's something that does work? It's not something that's you're trying to perfect, that's made completely of natural materials.
Yeah. So when we started tinkering with the recipe, I tried like just beeswax, and we tried things that were just like a recipe off the internet, right? And it didn't stick the way I wanted it to. And I often joke that I'm American and I do not have time to like convince something to get it to work, right? I just am not interested. And part of our ethos is that it should work, whatever eco product you have should work as well, if not better than the conventional option, right? So we did take a long time tinkering with the recipe because I just wanted it to stick and be done, right? Like I have had other experiences with beeswax wraps that it's terrible. And I think our return rate is still something like crazy small, like 0.0004% or something. And we don't even have a return system in place because it just doesn't happen. Particularly initially, before the organic cotton that we bring in was branded, we would get people that would send other people's wraps back, and I knew what the designs were. So I was like, oh, I'm sorry, this isn't our design, or this isn't our wrap, but here's a small, and here's one that works better or potentially works better for you. Which is where we got the idea to guarantee our uses. So I think we're the only one out there that I've seen that has a 365 use guarantee. And so that kind of quality was, I feel like, really important for the foundation. Like it should be just something that works, right? And you should get your money back out of it. So depending on how often you use it and how well you take care of it, it actually ends up being less expensive than plastic wrap.
That's superb. And I think that going through those cycles, it matters. Like I know I've tried some products where I want to move to natural. Like I tried a natural deodorant, and it's great, except it was pulling the hairs out of my underarm. And my existing underarm didn't do that, but my existing underarm is owned by a multi-billion-dollar company that has put the work in. And I thought to myself, how much research has gone into this product? Did any guy actually use it and give feedback to them? And it's absolutely critical. It's just got to work. With your 365-day use guarantee, what are the things that you can wrap? Like I'm thinking, if you have chicken in a bowl, can you then use it the next day for a leftover cake? Is there anything more in terms of thinking that you have to do when you're switching to a reusable wrap?
So we generally don't recommend raw meat. It's just because you can't heat it the same way. But it actually sticks to like wooden bowls that plastic wrap really doesn't. So certainly leftovers. I have not been able to find my kid's lunchbox lid before, and he's gone with a LilyBee over the top, right? If you have a container that you can't find the lid for, or it's fantastic for just putting over the top. In the summer, one of my favorite uses is actually putting it over watermelon. I love that. I love taking a bouquet of flowers, wrapping it around the ends. You know how you have the wet bit at the end to keep it fresh. And then if you go to a housewarming or something, you give that as part of the gift. I know that when they get on their last leg, we have people who put them in the travel arena. So like cover up their toothbrush when they go, or a bar of soap, or, there's a lot of different iterations, and people are coming up with different uses all the time. And it becomes part of your family, which is such an honor and a gift for us. Like, to think that we are in so many Kiwis' homes is it's one of those things that like makes my heart expand. To know that we're a part of people's everyday lives is such a privilege.
It's an amazing achievement. How long has it taken you to get to this point from that first trial and error of making one of these in a shed, thinking this is what I want to do?
So it was, like I said, I call myself an accidental entrepreneur, right? So it was like, oh, let's just go see how this goes. And then it got a little bit more serious when I was pregnant, and it went gangbusters at the farmers market. We have an amazing Hastings farmers market that I think is well known in New Zealand. And so that was a great sort of trial area, lots of feedback, we understood what the questions were. We got to see what our core demographic was. I highly recommend that as a place for people to start. And then 2 weeks before the baby was born, it was like, well, let's just put up a website, because how hard could having a small business and a newborn actually be? And it is something that I still think I'm entirely crazy for. I would never, ever recommend it. But it's taken us, we're 4 years old now. And while we've achieved quite a lot, we're still, we're still in that new small business range. But I definitely think I was pulled along for the ride as much as like planning. There was a point when I looked around and I was like, whoa, this is way bigger than I thought it was going to be. And I'm going to have to figure some things out.
So just picking up on a couple of things you've said there. So you've got a 4-year-old business, you've got a 4-year-old child that's been on that journey as you've been growing your business.
Yeah.
And it's not just you anymore, is it? There's a team of 15 people involved?
Yeah, it fluctuates a little bit with production, but we have a leadership team of 6 right now. And our manufacturing capability and personnel, that fluctuates a little bit. So that's kind of where we're sitting with that. Yeah. And definitely he was part of everything from the beginning. Like, I would go to lawyers' meetings and have my infant with me, and he's traveled all over the world with me now, because I had made a commitment that for the first 3 years he wouldn't spend a night away from me. And so he's been a part of this journey as much as I have, certainly, and certainly a huge part of the inspiration for it.
I watched the video on your website, and I really like the integration. Sometimes having kids in business, it's not a natural fit, but because your product's about helping the next generation and giving them a planet that's in great condition, it's just such a beautiful fit. And then you've got the Hawke's Bay landscapes in the background there's Tomato Peak. I think what you've done there is a beautiful way of bringing to life the product story. What's next in the innovation curve? Because I'm thinking to myself, if there's hundreds of thousands of households out there, they've got your product, you know who they are, what else goes into the fridge or the kitchen? There's lots of opportunities.
Absolutely. So we've played around with some of the eco range that we offer. And again, we've based that on, we're a really trusted brand. We have amazing support from our customers. And so we always want to make sure that we've tried it and that it's of a quality that we want to use and are excited about. We had an innovation around bags. So I was really anti-bags for a long time, because you can fold the flat wraps and make a bag. I think I actually brought one in. And now, like, this is one of the snack bags, and you can see it's sewn on the edges. And this is when the American in me speaks, right? Because it's just one flap that you do. And now I predominantly use this in Kio's lunches. So all of a sudden we had it one more, a little bit more convenient, and you can use it for all sorts of different things. So we're constantly looking. We've played around with the idea of a vegan wrap for a long time. And we also have looked at maybe introducing some local products into the lineup. So there's always possibility and opportunity as we go along, which is exciting. And there's a lot of amazing people to collaborate with in Hawke's Bay. So
there's very much a maker community and growing community there, particularly that farmers market. You get to see so much produce, and it's a great R&D lab. Now, Stacia, as you've said a couple of times there, you're not from New Zealand originally, from Portland, Oregon, as an American, which I love. So I've got to ask this question. What do you see in Kiwis, in New Zealanders? Like, how do you perceive of where we're at in this sustainability journey in comparison to what you saw back home?
So it's really hard to compare because I try to put into context that New Zealand is the population of the state that I'm from, and I'm from a small state, right? So it really depends on where you're talking about. But I do think across the board, it's becoming more and more mainstream, and it is mainstream. I think people know there's a problem. They may not go way out of their way to research it, but they want to be on board with it. And what I love about Kiwis is that you can touch so much of the population, right? So I think you guys have a saying about famous in New Zealand, right? I had people run out of restaurants, and I think they really noticed my kid particularly, be like, "You're the LilyBees," and like, and so really supportive, right? And I think people are open to trying things, right? Or they hear it's word of mouth a lot of times. People get excited, kind of, we've had men come through, and we would give him tours, and he said, I remember one guy said, "This is the most excited my wife has ever been about my job." And he goes, "I didn't know that we had a drawer full of LilyBees in in there." And I realized today, I guess he was making the lunch or something. He goes, "And the trauma if the right one is not clean." So I think that part is pretty amazing. And it does seem like, because I feel like Kiwis are closer to the earth and the land and nature, there's a bit more awareness. And then when you offer a possibility, there's the uptake, right? There's a real, I think, kindness, which is part of one of our values, right? That I see in Kiwis, and that authenticity piece is really beautiful here.
We're coming to the end of our time, Stacia. What question haven't I asked you, or what area or topic should I have asked you about? Either LilyBee or yourself, or about New Zealand Made?
I don't, that's a great question. I don't know if this is so much a question, but it is, as an American, and particularly with the political dynamic that's going on, and then COVID, just how grateful I am to be here and to be part of the Kiwi community, and how we have been embraced, even though I am American. I think it's such a, it's really lovely to hear, even from the Hawke's Bay community, some old school kind of farming community who've been keeping an eye on us, and I had no idea, and are cheering us on along the way. And I feel like that's such a Kiwi thing to do. If someone is in there amongst it, giving it a go, and that they just quietly or loudly cheer us on. And then to be able to raise my son here in an environment that I feel really safe in, and that he can flourish in, is truly such a privilege. Yeah,
it's a great country, and it's all the greater for having smart people who want to see some change happen. And you're certainly one of those. And thank you for your contribution to New Zealand and to the sustainability journey that we're all on, to make sure that we can hand on the planet to our next generation. It's super important. Thank you also for your time on the show today, and to be part of a Kiwi Original.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for watching this episode of a Kiwi Original. If you like what you saw, then hit the subscribe button, and you'll get other episodes just like this one in your inbox. Make sure you hit the bell too for notifications, and you'll be served up uniquely Kiwi stories like this one, contributing to New Zealand's future.